What if I told you that your dog may already think of you as family, but simply has no words to tell you? Not because they don't understand love, not because they don't feel attachment, but because dogs don't build families the way humans do. They don't care about last names. They don't understand birthdays. They don't know who shares their DNA. And they certainly don't care about who lives in the biggest house. Yet somehow, they still choose a family. And once they do, they begin showing it in ways so subtle, most people completely miss them. Maybe your dog follows you into every room. Maybe they sleep facing your bedroom door. Maybe they stare at you while you work. Maybe they wait by the window long before you come home. Or maybe they do something even stranger. They ignore everyone else and only relax when you're nearby. Most owners assume these behaviors mean their dog is simply being clingy. Some people even call it separation anxiety. But scientists who study attachment think there may be something much deeper happening. Because dogs may not just see us as owners. They may not even see us as friends. In some remarkable studies, researchers discovered that dogs often use their favorite humans as what psychologists call secure base, the very same type of emotional foundation human babies depend on when they explore the world. And if that's true, then perhaps we've been asking the wrong question all along. Maybe the question was never, asterisk, does my dog love me? Asterisk, maybe the better question is, asterisk, has my dog already decided that I'm family? Asterisk, and if they have, there are several silent signs that reveal it. Signs dogs display almost every single day. Signs so ordinary, you've probably seen them hundreds of times, without ever realizing what they might actually mean. And the final sign may completely change the way you look at your dog forever. So let's start with something surprising. Dogs probably don't think about family the way humans do. They don't recognize family photographs. They don't celebrate holidays. They don't understand marriage. They don't know what a surname is. And they certainly don't sit around comparing family trees. But that doesn't mean they don't understand belonging. In fact, dogs may understand belonging better than we do. Because to a dog, family isn't built from biology. Family is built from safety, from predictability, from comfort, from repeated moments that teach them one simple lesson. When I'm with this person, good things happen. Think about a puppy entering a new home for the very first time. At first, everything feels unfamiliar. New smells, new sounds, new routines, new people. It's overwhelming. But slowly, something begins to change. One person starts filling the food bowl. One person opens the front door each morning. One person sits on the floor and plays. One person speaks softly when thunderstorms arrive. One person scratches behind their ears in exactly the right place. One person always seems to come back. And over time, those ordinary experiences begin stacking together, until eventually, that person becomes something much bigger. Not simply an owner, not simply a caretaker, but a source of emotional security. Scientists studying attachment in dogs have found something fascinating. Many dogs use their favorite humans as what psychologists call a secure base. A secure base is someone whose presence makes exploration easier, someone whose absence changes behavior, someone who provides comfort during uncertainty. Human infants do this. Young children do this. And remarkably, dogs appear to do it too. Researchers observed that dogs were significantly more willing to investigate unfamiliar environments and solve problems when their trusted owner was nearby. It wasn't because the owner was giving commands. It wasn't because treats were involved. It wasn't even because the owner was actively interacting with them. Simply being there was enough, almost as if the dog was thinking, if you're here, then I'm okay. And perhaps that's one of the most powerful clues we have. Because dogs may not have words for family. They may never understand concepts like relatives or last names. But they seem to understand something far more important. Who protects them? Who comforts them? Who stays? Who returns? Who makes the world feel predictable? And once a dog decides someone fills that role, they start revealing it through quiet behaviors. Behaviors so subtle, most people mistake them for habits. But the first sign might actually be one of the strongest indicators that your dog has already decided you belong to their inner circle. Silent sign number 1. They follow you everywhere. And perhaps the first silent sign is also the one people complain about the most. You stand up to get a glass of water. Your dog gets up too. You walk into the kitchen. They're behind you. You head upstairs. They follow. You sit down to work. A few minutes later, they've quietly settled nearby. You walk toward the bathroom. And somehow, They're already waiting outside the door. Most people laugh about this. Some call their dogs clingy. Others assume their dog is simply hoping for food. But what if we've misunderstood this behavior entirely? Because dogs don't usually spend energy following people they don't consider important. Think about it. Dogs are experts at conserving effort. If they truly wanted to sleep, they could stay exactly where they are. If they only cared about comfort, they wouldn't repeatedly get up every time you moved. Yet many dogs willingly interrupt their naps, leave warm beds, abandon sunny spots by the window, just to remain close to one particular person. Why? Animal behaviorists believe this may be connected to attachment. In human families, young children often keep track of trusted caregivers, not because they're afraid, not because they're dependent, but because staying connected helps them feel secure. And dogs appear to do something surprisingly similar. Researchers studying dog owner attachment have observed that many dogs naturally monitor the movements of their favorite person. They check where you are. They notice when you leave a room. They become interested when they hear your footsteps. And they often reposition themselves to maintain what scientists sometimes call social proximity. In simpler terms, they like knowing where their person is. But here's the fascinating part. Following you isn't always about wanting attention. Sometimes, it's simply about wanting reassurance. Your dog may not need pets. They may not want treats. They may not even expect you to interact with them. They just want to know you're still there. Because when dogs begin seeing someone as a secure base, distance matters. Not necessarily because they're anxious, but because being near that person makes the world feel predictable, comfortable, safe. And perhaps that's why your dog quietly appears beside your desk, or curls up outside your bedroom, or waits patiently while you fold laundry. They aren't trying to control where you go. They're simply choosing where they feel most at home. And if that sounds remarkably similar to the way family members naturally stay connected to one another, that may not be a coincidence. Because the second silent sign dogs show when they think your family might reveal something even more profound. It happens when they're at their most vulnerable, when they close their eyes and decide exactly where they want to sleep. Silent sign number 2. And this brings us to perhaps the strongest sign of all, a sign that scientists didn't just observe, they actually measured. It's called the secure base effect. And once you understand it, you may never look at your relationship with your dog the same way again. Imagine being placed in a completely unfamiliar room. You've never been there before. The smells are strange. The sounds feel different. Nothing seems predictable. Now imagine someone you deeply trust walks in beside you. Almost instantly, the room doesn't feel quite as intimidating. You breathe easier. You become more curious, more willing to explore, more willing to interact with the world around you. Human babies do this all the time. Psychologists have studied it for decades. Children use trusted caregivers as emotional anchors, people who make unfamiliar places feel safe enough to investigate. And surprisingly, dogs appear to do exactly the same thing. In one remarkable study, researchers placed dogs in an unfamiliar environment and presented them with puzzles to solve. Sometimes their owner was present. Sometimes their owner was absent. And the difference was fascinating. Dogs whose owners remained nearby were more confident, more engaged, more willing to approach new objects, more persistent when trying to solve problems. Not because their owners gave instructions, not because treats suddenly appeared, and not because someone was encouraging them. Simply knowing their person was there changed everything. Think about that for a moment. Your dog doesn't need you to constantly talk. They don't always need petting. They don't need you throwing a ball. Sometimes, your presence alone is enough. Almost as if your dog is quietly saying, asterisk, if you're here, I can handle this. Asterisk. And perhaps that's one of the most beautiful parts of being loved by a dog. Because dogs don't hand out this kind of trust easily. They build it slowly, day after day, walk after walk, meal after meal, thunderstorm after thunderstorm, until eventually, your voice becomes familiar, your footsteps become reassuring, your scent becomes comforting, and your presence becomes part of their emotional safety net. At that point, you stop being just the person who owns them. You become the person who helps them feel brave, the person who makes uncertainty feel manageable, the person they instinctively look for when the world doesn't make sense. And if a dog truly begins seeing you as their secure base, there's another silent behavior that suddenly makes much more sense. Because when dogs feel safest around someone, they often choose to become vulnerable in the most surprising way possible. They choose where they sleep. Silent sign number 3. They sleep near you. And perhaps the third silent sign is one of the easiest to overlook, because it usually happens at the end of the day, when the house becomes quiet, the lights grow dim, and everyone begins settling in for the night. Your dog has options. They could sleep in another room. They could stay on their favorite bed. They could stretch out near a cool window, or curl up somewhere completely alone. And yet, many dogs choose something very different. They choose to sleep near you. Maybe it's beside your bed. Maybe it's outside your bedroom door. Maybe it's on the couch next to you. Maybe it's with their back gently pressed against your leg. And maybe you've never thought much about it. After all, dogs sleep a lot. So perhaps it's just coincidence. Perhaps they simply found the softest spot in the house. But what if it means something much deeper? Because sleep is one of the most vulnerable states any animal can enter. A sleeping dog can't monitor every sound. They can't react as quickly to danger. They can't keep watch over their surroundings. For wild canines and their ancestors, choosing where to sleep was never random. It was about safety, trust, and knowing who was worth resting beside. Even today, many dogs still carry those instincts. They don't always choose the most comfortable place. They often choose the place that feels the most secure. And for dogs that have formed strong attachment bonds, that secure place is frequently close to one particular person. You. Silent sign number 4. They watch you constantly. And perhaps the fourth silent sign is one of the strangest. Because once you notice it, you start seeing it everywhere. You're washing dishes, and your dog is watching. You're answering emails. They're watching. You're folding laundry, making coffee, reading a book, scrolling through your phone. And somehow, those familiar eyes always seem to find their way back to you. At first, it can feel a little funny, almost as if you're living with a tiny, furry supervisor. Some owners joke that their dogs are simply being nosy. Others assume they're waiting for food, or hoping you'll grab a leash. But what if that's only part of the story? Because dogs are incredibly observant animals. Long before they shared our couches, our homes, and our routines, their ancestors survived by paying close attention to the individuals around them, watching movements, predicting behaviors, learning patterns, and domestic dogs have become especially skilled at doing this with humans. In fact, dogs may be better at reading human social cues than almost any other animal on Earth. They notice subtle changes in body posture. They recognize familiar routines. They can distinguish emotional tones in our voices. And many dogs seem remarkably good at predicting what we're about to do next. Think about your own dog. Do they stand up before you even touch their leash? Do they run toward the door when you put on certain shoes? Do they appear in the kitchen seconds before dinner? Do they somehow know when you're getting ready to leave? They're not reading minds. They're reading you. Because when someone becomes important to a dog, that person becomes worth studying, worth understanding, worth paying attention to. And perhaps that's exactly what family members do. Human families learn each other's habits. Parents recognize their children's footsteps. Children know their parents' routines. People who love each other naturally begin noticing the smallest details. Dogs may not understand family photographs. They may not understand birthdays. But they seem to understand something equally powerful: the importance of knowing the people who matter most. And maybe that's why your dog looks up every time you stand, why they glance toward you while resting, why they seem comforted simply by knowing where you are. Because perhaps they're not watching you out of boredom. Perhaps they're watching because you've become one of the most meaningful parts of their world, someone worth keeping track of, someone worth understanding, someone worth staying connected to. And if that's true, there's one final silent sign that might reveal. Silent sign number 5. They choose you over excitement. And perhaps the fifth silent sign says more than anything else. Because sometimes, dogs have to make a choice between something exciting and someone important. Imagine you're at a park. There are squirrels, interesting smells, other dogs, people passing by. Everything is competing for your dog's attention. And yet, many dogs do something unexpected. They stop, turn around, and look for you. Sometimes they run back for a quick touch. Sometimes they sit beside you for a few seconds. Sometimes they simply make eye contact before continuing to explore. At first, this may seem insignificant, but researchers studying attachment in dogs have noticed something fascinating. Dogs with strong bonds often check back with their owners while exploring unfamiliar environments, almost as if they're saying, asterisk, I'm curious, asterisk, asterisk, I want to explore, asterisk, asterisk, but I still want to know you're here. Asterisk. And perhaps that's what family really means to a dog. Not staying together every second. Not constantly seeking attention, but choosing to come back. Choosing the person who makes the world feel safe. Because dogs don't care about status. They don't care about success. They don't care about possessions. They care about something much simpler. Who feels like home? And when your dog repeatedly chooses your presence, even when the world offers countless distractions, they may already be telling you something profound without making a sound. Asterisk, you're my person. Asterisk. Asterisk, you're my safe place. Asterisk. Asterisk, you're my family. Asterisk. And perhaps the most beautiful part of all is that dogs don't decide someone is family because of grand gestures. They decide it because of the small moments we barely notice at all. The big reveal: dogs don't think in titles. And perhaps this is where we've misunderstood dogs all along. Because maybe dogs don't spend their lives trying to figure out who owns them. They don't think in titles. They don't think, asterisk, this is my owner. Asterisk. Asterisk, this is my caretaker. Asterisk. Asterisk, this is the person who pays the bills. Asterisk. Dogs don't understand careers. They don't know how much money you make. They don't care what kind of car you drive. They don't know whether you've had a successful week or whether you've made mistakes. They see something much simpler. Who fills their bowl? Who waits patiently while they sniff every tree? Who laughs when they zoom around the house for absolutely no reason? Who sits beside them during thunderstorms? Who speaks softly when they're afraid? Who always seems to come back? And perhaps that's what dogs use to define family. Not biology, not names, not photographs hanging on a wall, but familiarity, safety, predictability, shared moments. The people whose footsteps make their tail wag before the front door even opens. The people whose scent can calm them after a stressful day. The people whose presence alone makes unfamiliar places feel less frightening. And maybe that's why dogs are so extraordinary. Because they remind us of something humans often forget. Family isn't always the people we're related to. Sometimes, family is simply the people who consistently make us feel safe. The people who stay. The people who return. The people who turn ordinary moments into meaningful memories. And perhaps that's what your dog has been trying to tell you all along. Not with words, not with barking, not even with wagging tails, but through quiet choices. Following you, sleeping nearby, watching you, checking back when exploring, choosing your presence over excitement. Small behaviors. Behaviors that may be saying something remarkably simple. Asterisk, you may call yourself my owner. Asterisk, but I've already decided. Asterisk, you're my family. Asterisk,